Hi, everyone. Today we're talking about the latest from BramBos. It's a weird synth, like everything that BramBos does. It's a cool synth, is a soft synth, is for the iOS, iPad, and iPhone. It's called Hilda. And it's a synthesizer plus a step sequencer. But the synthesizer, it's just weird. It's fun. It's weird. A lot of ideas comes from the Buchla type of West Coast style of synthesis, and it's not something we see often in these, apps that we have today. But BramBos made this really cool synth. Now, it's a little bit weird when you get to use it first because the structure is not what you're used to. And that's actually a cool thing because there's a lot of cool synthesizer out there, but at one point they all do the same basic structure that you always have. Like since the Minimoog Model D, it's always the same thing. I'm not saying it's bad. Of course, it's one of the coolest way to make synthesis and to play sound is to use that structure. But in this case, Hilda is just out there, making, but also that weird structure for people who are not used to it. It's basically that legacy or that wink to the West Coast synthesis style. So let's actually go in and see how it works. Okay. So Hilda is presented as a complex oscillator synth. Yes, because it can create really complex tones with only using one oscillator. So it's a mono synthesizer. It's a mono synth. You can always use it two different ways with the step sequencer or with an external synthesizer and just play it and, play it. So this section here is basically the synthesis section, okay? You also have then the filter section, okay? You have then effects, what they call space. You have the ADSR, the LFOs, slope, which is basically a AD, so attack and decay or release. And you have this other external input that you can use. If you load it as a plugin inside a DAW, but you load it as an effect, then the external in will be useful to process whatever you send to it using all of this. And then the sequencing or modulation of the thing can be used using the step sequencer that you have under it. If you look at the screen itself, you have just one oscillator here that you can move shapes. And when you look at the other corner here, you see the wave of the value. And this is good for any knob that you move. It will show you the information here. So if I'm actually, my headphones, if I'm actually playing a key here, I only hear this one. And when you do this, you're changing the sound of it, the wave file, basically. Now, if you want to hear longer, you're going to have to go into ADSR, which is get AS and D and R, which are the same speed. Bring some of the sustain up. Now we hear it, okay? So then you can go here and... So now you hear the whole, offer of different waveform. But when we say it's a complex oscillator synth, is that oscillator has frequency here to change the pitch. So if you double tap on it, you go back to 0. You have the glide to control this. So every time you play a key, you want to glide or not. Okay. Then you have a timbre control and a fold. So this is really West Coast style because if you go like this, and then if you change again the original shape, the fold, it's weird. It's a way to actually take the frequency and fold them onto itself, but it's basically creating new harmonics, new frequency content. And if you change it, if you bring that down to 0 and you bring the temper up, it's like if you're opening up more frequency in it. Okay, and if you fold this again, Now, and any of these steps, we're still in the oscillator section. If you want to create movement in this, you can just have the S on top here. The S is the slope here. So if you just bring that up and you play a little bit to add some slope up and down when you press it, want it to be slower. Okay, let's listen to this. Want to hear the whole thing? And you see the little light beside slope that turns on with the intensity of where it is. So very, very visual and seeing this, okay? What else you have here? You have same thing with the timbre. If you play with this, so the slope only controls the fold here. These here are the LFOs. You see the little graphic here, LFO. So this controls the shape of the waveform. This controls the frequency, so the pitch, and the ratio. And if you want to see this, well, where you control this, you've got the LFO here. You got the sign, so you can choose the shape, triangular, square, simple and hold, ramp up and down. So basically sawtooth ups and sawtooth down. Let's say we keep that sign for now. You've got the frequency, speed of it, and you see right away the speed here. So you know the speed, and you see how quick and the intensity of it. And the modulation is, this one is being modulated. So it becomes modulated by another one. So that's kind of weird. And again, it's kind of fun because of that. So let's actually go into playing with this. So in the oscillator section, you also have, let's bring the slope to 0 for now. You also have the ratio. The ratio has a control over the FM synthesis, the sub oscillator, and the cross and slash ring modulation. So it's a bizarre cross modulation, ring modulation, sync modulation, because it does the two cross and ring at the same time. So when you bring that up, it creates these very that would be a normal cross modulation, ring modulation, because you would have the fold. But when you bring the fold in, this is just like nasty distortion in a way, but it's not distortion. It's cross modulation. Now without the cross modulation. Now you've got also FM. If you bring FM up, let's bring that down for now so we hear really what FM does. Same logic again if you want to use the slope to control this. So this 2 here, if you bring the slope up, you're going to have. And again, if you bring that to the maximum, you're going to hear the full movement. I like to use some of it. Now, remember that when you move these, it gives you the information. When you move the ratio, it tells you that this, if you put it at 1, it's going to be exactly the same speed of the original. So it's going to be 1-on-1. But if you put it at plus 0.5, it's going to be half speed, so an octave lower. So it gives you that bottom sound. And if you're anything in between, you've got these just... let's bring that down, because now I don't have any at the sustain. It's just like, it's really fun. It's just a different. So this is FM synthesis using 2 oscillators. You have the sub. If you bring the sub in, you have. Bring down the FM. So the ratio controls the sub. It's just like, it gives you that really warm and rich sound really quickly. And again, this is one oscillator, well, with a sub, so it's like a 2 oscillator. The second one will be controlled by the ratio, and the FM cross mod, I think it's coming from the sub, I'm not sure, but it feels really cool. Now, when you combine all of this, you have a control here. As you go to the left, it becomes cleaner and softer. Go to the right, it squashes it, like you're compressing it. So it brings everything up and it makes it a lot more noisier or in your face. You have them, then you've got the low pass. Actually, it's a filter. You click on it, you have a low pass, 12, 18, which is rare, 24, high pass, band pass 12, band pass 24, AP/LP, notch filter, phaser, high pass and low pass, notch plus low pass, and a band pass. So you don't have any filter. Well, that's the sound without the filter, where the one we had earlier was using this. So you have some resonance coming in. And you have a drive, a bit more bite on the filter itself. And again, you've got LFO that controls it and the slope to control it. The ADSR is really made here not for the modulation, but for the volume itself, the amplitude. So this is the amplitude section. So you cannot use this to assign to something else. I would like to have the option of, I don't know, clicking on this and say switching between ADSR or slope, and then this, it would swap them, you know? So I don't know, BramBos, maybe a switch that you can actually swap between ADSR and slope, and say the slope becomes the volume control, and then whatever. That's just me thinking out loud. This is kind of a phaser. And as you move away from the button, you get that. It's a lo-fi kind of Foreman. And as you move away, you control how much of it. This is slow down, like a tape slowing down. This one records and play backwards. This one loops, and then you play with it. So these are really to have that real-time interaction with your sound and create something interesting. So this is actually pretty cool to play it, you know, in real time. So this is a fun thing. Let's go back to the init sound. I'm just going to create one really quick with you so you see how easy it is. So just like play with this, and then you start to create more, you know, a richer tone. You have your sub, but you want to have more bass, so you try to figure out where you want to have more bass until you like it. And I want some grit in it also. Easily, you're just going to having something really quickly fun to play with. Really quickly get that cool sound happening. This little thing, as I play with it, I wish I had more modulation, like a second LFO that would control over it. So I wish for more, because this screams like patching. But for what it is now, it's a full, really cool synth to play with. So I just quickly made these preset. It's easy to just like create some, like this one is. So that's the cool part. If we close this and we go in the app itself alone and we load the same preset like this one. Now we're running the sequencer here. But let's go back to this so you understand how the sequencer works. Of course, if you play this, you understand you're gonna have these little notes here. These are the pitch happening. You get the velocity here. You have the gate. Okay, you get the speed of it. The speed of the duration of each of the steps. Okay, you want it bouncing, front and back. But where it becomes really bad, you get the bass octave. Okay. What's really cool is the mutation section here. If you bring that up, it's going to mutate the sequence. But it will always go back to the original, mutating it around the original. So your bass line is always that, coming back all the time. But if you go mutation, it changes around that original one. Say you just want to but what you can do, which is really cool, you can make it permanent. So every time it mutates, it becomes the new baseline. So it means that you will never go back to the first one. It's just going to continuously change into something else. So this is weird and at the same time pretty fun. And that's where you can start to have fun with these things. That's it. That's Hilda. That's really wicked, weird, different synthesizer because it does things that we're not used to. It's different, and that's why it's interesting. It doesn't give you what you're used to. BramBos, another weird, fun app. Keep doing it. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe, make more music, and see you soon. Cheers.